At 24:50 on December 31st, 1943, Squadron Leader John Cunningham crouched in the cockpit of his Bristol Beaufighter at RAF Middle Wallop, watching his radar operator track multiple contacts moving at 210 knots through the winter darkness toward London. 27 years old, 200 confirmed night kills, the most successful night fighter pilot in the Royal Air Force. The Luftwaffe had sent 474 bombers to destroy London that night. New Year's Eve, the biggest raid since the Blitz, ended in May 1941. German High Command called it Operation Steinbock, the baby Blitz. They wanted to break British morale, prove the Luftwaffe could still strike at England's heart. Hermann Göring had promised Hitler one final knockout blow. 474 bombers, Heinkel He 177s, Dornier Do 217s, Junkers Ju 88s. Every available aircraft from Luftwaffe 3 operating from French airfields. The raid was timed for maximum psychological impact. New Year's Eve, when British civilians would be celebrating, when they thought the worst was over. The air raid sirens would ruin their celebrations, send them into shelters, remind them the war was far from won. No. 604 Squadron was the only thing standing between those bombers and London. 17 Bristol Beaufighters, 34 crew members counting pilots and radar operators. They had been drinking. New Year's Eve tradition. The officers' mess at Middle Wallop had been serving whiskey and beer since 2000 hours. Cunningham had limited himself to 2 drinks. He knew better than to get drunk before midnight on a combat base. Most of his pilots had consumed more. Flying Officer James Benson was on his 4th whiskey. Flight Lieutenant Ronald Kellett had finished half a bottle of champagne. Pilot Officer Derek Ward couldn't walk straight. Sergeant Peter Henderson had passed out in a chair at 21:30 and was still unconscious. None of them expected to fly combat that night. Intelligence had predicted light Luftwaffe activity. New Year's Eve meant German crews would be celebrating too. Both sides had an unspoken agreement. Major operations on holidays were rare. The Luftwaffe hadn't launched a major raid since June 1943. 7 months of relative quiet. British civilians had started believing the bombing war was over. They were wrong. But at 20-30 hours, the air raid warning went active. The alert klaxon shattered the celebrations in the officers' mess. Men dropped their drinks. Some cursed. Others scrambled for the door. Pilots ran for their aircraft, still wearing dress uniforms. Radar operators grabbed their flight gear and followed. RAF Fighter Command had detected a massive formation crossing the English Channel, 474 aircraft heading northeast toward London. The radar returns showed the largest concentration of enemy bombers since the Blitz ended. Every night fighter squadron in southern England scrambled immediately. The duty officer at Middle Wallop ordered all available aircraft airborne within 10 minutes. 17 Beaufighters. Some crews were sober, others were drunk. It didn't matter. The Luftwaffe was coming, and every fighter was needed. Ground crews rushed to prepare aircraft. Fuel trucks topped off tanks. Armorers loaded cannons and machine guns. Mechanics performed hasty pre-flight checks. The entire airfield transformed from New Year's celebration to combat operations in minutes. Cunningham's radar operator was Flight Lieutenant Charles Frederick Jimmy Rawnsley. They had flown 142 operational sorties together since joining 604 Squadron in November 1940. 3 years of night combat. They had developed near telepathic coordination. Cunningham could predict what Rawnsley would say before he said it. Rawnsley knew how Cunningham would react to contact information before he reacted. This partnership was the foundation of their success. Rawnsley sat behind Cunningham in a compartment filled with AI Mark 8 radar equipment. The space was cramped, barely 6 feet long and 3 feet wide. He was surrounded by electronic equipment. The air interception radar could detect aircraft up to 5 miles away in complete darkness. The system used a rotating antenna mounted in the Beaufighter's nose. The antenna transmitted microwave pulses at 209 megahertz. When those pulses hit an aircraft, they bounced back. Rawnsley's scope showed the return as a glowing blip on a cathode ray tube display. The radar had two separate scopes. One showed azimuth, left or right, of the Beaufighter's nose. The other showed elevation, above or below. Rawnsley watched both displays simultaneously. He interpreted the radar returns, calculated intercept vectors, and communicated corrections to Cunningham through the intercom. The work required intense concentration. A single error in reading the scope meant missing the target. A mistake in vector calculation meant flying past the bomber without detecting it. Rawnsley made no mistakes. The radar had revolutionized night fighting. Before AI radar, night fighters relied on searchlights and luck. Pilots flew blind, hoping to spot enemy bombers silhouetted against clouds or fires below. They depended on ground controllers to vector them toward approximate positions, then searched visually for targets. The kill rate was approximately 1 bomber per 100 sorties. Most night fighters never saw an enemy aircraft. They flew patrol patterns in darkness and landed without ever detecting a target. With AI radar, everything changed. The system eliminated the need for visual detection. Night fighters could track bombers through solid cloud cover, through rain, through complete darkness. The radar operator guided the pilot toward the target using verbal corrections. When close enough, the pilot could see the bomber visually and engage with cannons. The kill rate increased to 1 bomber per 15 sorties. Exceptional crews like Cunningham and Rawnsley achieved even better statistics. They averaged 1 kill per 8 sorties. Their partnership had become legendary within fighter command. The Beaufighter was purpose-built for night combat. 2 Bristol Hercules 16 radial engines producing 1,670 horsepower each. Maximum speed 330 miles per hour. Crew of 2, pilot, and radar operator. Armament consisted of 4 20mm Hispano Mark II cannons mounted in the lower fuselage and 6.303 Browning machine guns in the wings. The cannons were the real weapon. Each cannon fired 600 rounds per minute. High explosive shells with devastating effect against bomber airframes. 1 2-second burst could destroy a Heinkel or Dornier. The Beaufighter carried 240 rounds per cannon, enough ammunition for 24 seconds of sustained fire. Cunningham never needed that much. He preferred short bursts. Close range, 2 seconds. Confirm the kill. Move to the next target. Ammunition conservation meant more kills per sortie. Cunningham started both engines at 224.6. The Hercules radials coughed blue exhaust and settled into a steady roar. He checked the instrument panel. Oil pressure normal. Hydraulics operational. Radio functioning. Rawnsley confirmed radar was active. The rest of 604 Squadron was scrambling simultaneously. 16 other Beaufighters taxiing to the runway. Some pilots were more sober than others. Flying Officer Benson nearly ran his aircraft into a hangar during taxi. Flight Lieutenant Kellett forgot to release his parking brake. Pilot Officer Ward needed assistance from his ground crew to find his cockpit. These were experienced combat pilots, men who had flown dozens of night missions, killed German bombers over Britain's skies. But they were also drunk on New Year's Eve, and they were about to engage 474 enemy bombers in total darkness. Fighter Command vectored 604 Squadron toward a massive formation approaching from the southeast. The German bombers were flying at altitudes between 15,000 and 20,000 feet. They were scattered across a front 30 miles wide, making coordinated interception difficult. Each Beaufighter would have to hunt individually, find a target close to firing range, destroy it, repeat. The mathematics were brutal. 17 British night fighters versus 474 German bombers. Even if every Beaufighter scored multiple kills, hundreds of bombers would reach London. Cunningham took off at 2,252. The Beaufighter climbed at 1,800 feet per minute. Rawnsley activated the radar and began scanning. At 10,000 feet altitude, he detected the first contact. Bearing 095 degrees, range 4 miles, altitude 16,000 feet. The contact was heading northeast toward London. Airspeed approximately 210 knots. Rawnsley identified it as a heavy bomber based on the radar return signature. Cunningham adjusted course to intercept. He pushed the throttles forward. The Hercules engines responded instantly. The Beaufighter accelerated to 280 miles per hour. Range 3 miles. Cunningham couldn't see anything through the canopy. Complete darkness. No moon. Heavy cloud cover obscured the stars. This was why the Luftwaffe chose tonight. Darkness meant their bombers were invisible to conventional fighters. But Cunningham wasn't flying a conventional fighter. He had AI radar. The Germans didn't know it existed. Their bombers flew without electronic countermeasures, without radar warning receivers, completely unaware that British night fighters could track them through clouds and darkness. Range 2 miles. Rawnsley called corrections, left 5 degrees, climbed to 16,500 feet. Cunningham followed the instructions precisely. The radar operator was his eyes. Without Rawnsley, he was blind. With Rawnsley, he could see targets 5 miles away in absolute darkness. Range 1 mile. Cunningham activated his own radar repeater scope, a smaller display integrated into the main instrument panel. When the target got close enough, he could track it himself without relying on verbal instructions. The pilot scope showed range and relative bearing. Simple display, but effective. Range 800 yards. Cunningham saw the target visually for the first time. A dark shape against slightly less dark clouds. The bomber's exhaust flames were visible. 4 orange glows from the engine nacelles. Heinkel. He 177 Greif, Germany's newest heavy bomber. 2 Daimler-Benz DB 610 engines, each producing 2,950 horsepower. Maximum speed 295 miles per hour. Crew of 6. Bomb load 13,200 pounds. The He 177 had a critical design flaw. The engines were actually 2 motors mounted side by side, driving a single propeller through a complex gearbox. The configuration generated excessive heat. He 1770s frequently caught fire in flight. German crews called them Luftwaffenfeuerzeug, Luftwaffe lighters. But when they worked, they could carry more bombs than any other German aircraft. If you want to see how Cunningham and his squadron hunted down 23 bombers in one night, please hit that like button. It helps us share these forgotten stories with more people. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Cunningham. Cunningham positioned the Beaufighter 400 yards behind the Heinkel, slightly below. The 420mm cannons were fixed forward. He had to aim the entire aircraft. He used the Mk 4-gun sight. An illuminated reticle projected onto a combining glass. The sight compensated for bullet drop and target motion. Cunningham adjusted his position until the Heinkel sat centered in the reticle. Range 350 yards. He armed the cannons. The firing circuit energized. Red indicator lights confirmed all 4 weapons were ready. Cunningham squeezed the trigger at 300 yards. The 4 cannons fired simultaneously. The sound was deafening, even through the engine noise. 20mm high explosive shells streamed toward the He 177 at 2,800 feet per second. The tracers looked like red lines drawn across the darkness. Cunningham fired for 2 seconds. 16 rounds per cannon. 64 shells total. The Heinkel's left wing exploded. Fuel tanks ruptured and ignited. The bomber rolled left and entered a steep dive. Cunningham watched it fall. The burning aircraft illuminated the clouds below like a descending meteor. It crashed 12 miles southeast of London at 23:01. 6 German crewmen dead, 1 bomber down. Cunningham turned back toward the main formation. Rawnsley was already tracking a second contact. Bearing 110 degrees, range 3.5 miles, altitude 17,000 feet. Cunningham climbed and turned to intercept. The engagement pattern was identical to the first. Close from behind, position below and slightly behind. Fire at 300 yards. 2-second burst. Confirmed the kill. The second bomber was a Dornier Du 217. 4 BMW 801 radial engines, maximum speed 320 miles per hour, crew of 4. Cunningham destroyed it at 2309. The DO 217 exploded when his cannon shells hit the bomb bay. The aircraft was carrying a full load of high-explosive bombs. The detonation was visible for miles, a white flash that lit up the entire sky like lightning. Debris rained down across Kent. The explosion killed all 4 crewmen instantly, 2 bombers down, 472 remaining. Cunningham returned to the hunt. Rawnsley detected a third contact at 2312. Junkers Ju 88, Germany's most versatile bomber. 2 Junkers, Jumo, 211 engines producing 1,410 horsepower each. Maximum speed, 292 miles per hour. Crew of 4. The Ju 88 was faster than the He 177 and more maneuverable than the Do 217. But it couldn't escape a Beaufighter guided by radar. Cunningham closed to 250 yards and fired. 3-second burst this time. The Ju 88's fuselage disintegrated. The aircraft broke apart in mid-air. The tail section separated from the main fuselage. Both pieces fell separately. The bomber crashed at 2318. 4 more German crewmen dead. 3 kills in 26 minutes. Cunningham was operating at maximum efficiency. Find target, close, fire, kill, repeat. No wasted ammunition, no misses. Every burst hit exactly where he aimed. Across southern England, the rest of 604 Squadron was achieving similar results. Flying Officer Benson, despite being drunk, destroyed 2 Do 217 between 2300 and 2320. Flight Lieutenant Kellett shot down a He 177 at 2305 and a Ju 88 at 2315. Pilot Officer Ward, barely able to walk 2 hours earlier, destroyed 3 bombers in 18 minutes, and the squadron was performing at a level that defied explanation. Drunk pilots should not have been able to fly combat missions. They should have crashed during takeoff or lost orientation in the darkness. But these were not ordinary pilots. They were the elite of RAF Fighter Command, men who had flown hundreds of night missions, men who could navigate by instruments alone, men who had killed so many German bombers that the process had become mechanical. Alcohol slowed their reflexes slightly. It made them slightly less cautious, but it didn't eliminate their fundamental skills. Rawnsley detected the 4th contact at 2,322, another He 177, altitude 19,000 feet. The bomber was climbing, trying to avoid the night fighters operating at lower altitudes. The tactic failed. Cunningham climbed to intercept. At 19,500 feet, he positioned behind the Heinkel and fired. 2-second burst. The He 177 caught fire immediately. The characteristic engine overheating problem combined with cannon damage. The bomber became a fireball. It fell out of control and crashed at 2,329. 6 more German crewmen dead. 4 kills for Cunningham. 16 shells remaining in each cannon. 64 rounds total. Enough ammunition for 4 more kills if he maintained his accuracy. The German formation was breaking apart. 474 bombers had started the mission in coordinated waves. The Luftwaffe had planned this raid for weeks. German bomber crews had trained specifically for nighttime navigation over England. They studied maps, memorized landmarks, practiced formation flying in darkness. The plan called for 3 waves hitting London in succession. The first wave would saturate British air defenses. The second wave would exploit the chaos. The third wave would deliver the knockout blow. But the plan had a fatal flaw. The Luftwaffe assumed British night fighters would be blind in total darkness. They didn't know about AI radar. German intelligence had failed to detect the revolutionary technology that made darkness irrelevant. Luftwaffe planners believed their bombers would be invisible at night. They were catastrophically wrong. Now the bombers were scattered across southern England, individual aircraft fleeing toward London or turning back toward France. Formations had dissolved. Pilots who saw other aircraft exploding in mid-air abandoned their mission profiles. Some jettisoned their bombs over the English Channel and ran for home. Others climbed to higher altitudes, trying to escape the slaughter. A few brave crews maintained course toward London, determined to complete their missions despite watching their comrades die around them. The night fighters were slaughtering them. RAF Fighter Command had scrambled every available Beaufighter and de Havilland Mosquito from squadrons across the region. 73 night fighters were airborne, each one hunting independently, each one guided by radar. The Germans had no defense. Their bombers carried no radar warning equipment, no electronic countermeasures, no tail warning systems. They had no way to detect pursuing night fighters until cannon shells started hitting their aircraft. By then, it was too late. At 23:35, Cunningham intercepted his fifth target, Dornier Du 217. The bomber crew saw the Beaufighter approaching. They tried evasive maneuvers, turning, diving, changing altitude. The tactics were useless against radar-guided interception. Cunningham followed every move. At 23:40, he closed to 280 yards and fired. The Du 217 exploded. 5 kills. Cunningham was now tied with his personal single-night record. Every kill after this would set a new benchmark. Rawnsley detected a sixth contact at 23:45. He 177, altitude 15,000 feet, heading northeast toward central London. This bomber had penetrated deeper than the others. It was approaching the city limits. If it reached the target area and dropped its bombs, hundreds of civilians would die. Cunningham pushed the throttles to maximum power. The Beaufighter accelerated to 330 miles per hour. He closed the distance in 4 minutes. At 23:49, he positioned 250 yards behind the He-177 and fired. 3-second burst. The Heinkel's fuselage ruptured. The bomb bay doors tore away. 2 4,000-pound bombs fell free. They detonated when they hit the ground 14 miles southeast of London. The explosions created craters 40 feet wide. The He-177 crashed separately at 23:53. 6 German crewmen dead. Cunningham had now killed 36 enemy airmen in 1 hour of combat. 6 kills. Cunningham had 16 cannon shells remaining, 4 shells per gun. Enough for 1 more engagement if he fired a 4-second burst or 2 engagements with 2-second bursts each. He chose economy. 2 more kills would be better than 1. Rawnsley detected a 7th contact at 23:58, 2 minutes before midnight. 2 minutes before 1944. Junkers Ju-88, altitude 16,500 feet. Cunningham intercepted at 0002 on January 1st, 1944. The calendar had changed. The year had changed. The war continued. He fired at 0004, 2-second burst. 8 shells per cannon, 32 rounds total. The Ju-88's right engine exploded. The bomber rolled inverted and fell. It crashed at 0007. 4 more German crewmen dead. 7 kills for Cunningham. 8 rounds remaining. Rawnsley detected the 8th contact at 0012. Another Ju-88. This was Cunningham's final engagement. 8 cannon shells remaining. 2 shells per gun. 1 burst. 1 chance. He closed to 200 yards, closer than normal. At point-blank range, he couldn't miss. He fired at 0015. 2-second burst. 8 shells, all of them hit. The Ju-88 disintegrated. The wings separated from the fuselage. The aircraft fell in pieces. It crashed at 0018. 4 more German crewmen dead. 8 kills. Cunningham's ammunition was exhausted. 4 cannons, 240 rounds total when he took off at 2,252. All 240 rounds expended. 8 bombers destroyed, 44 German crewmen killed, 103 minutes of combat. Cunningham turned back toward Middle Wallop. His fuel gauge showed 25% remaining, approximately 40 minutes of flight time. The return flight would take 25 minutes. He had fuel to spare. Rawnsley secured the radar equipment. The scope went dark. Their night was finished. Behind them, the rest of 604 Squadron was still hunting. Each Beaufighter crew was operating independently, guided by ground controllers who vectored them toward concentrations of German bombers. The coordination between ground radar, controllers, and individual night fighters was working flawlessly. Every bomber the Germans sent toward London was being tracked, intercepted, and destroyed. Flying Officer James Benson destroyed his third bomber at 0025. A Heinkel He-177 that tried to escape by diving toward the ground. Benson followed the dive, closing from 400 yards to 200 yards before firing. His 2-second burst hit the He-177's fuel tanks. The bomber exploded so violently that debris struck Benson's Beaufighter. A piece of the German aircraft's wing lodged in Benson's left engine cowling. The engine lost 200 horsepower, but kept running. Benson continued hunting. Flight Lieutenant Ronald Kellett shot down 2 more Dornier Du 217s between 0030 and 0045. His tactics were aggressive to the point of recklessness. He closed to less than 150 yards before firing, well inside the minimum recommended engagement range. At that distance, debris from the exploding bomber could hit the pursuing fighter. Kellett didn't care. Closer range meant higher probability of kill. He destroyed both Du 217s with single bursts, 4 shells per cannon, 16 rounds total per target. Economy of ammunition that bordered on showmanship. Pilot Officer Derek Ward killed his 4th target at 0052, another Junkers Ju 88. Ward had developed a reputation for unconventional tactics. He approached targets from unusual angles. Diving attacks from above, climbing attacks from below, beam attacks from the side. His radar operator struggled to maintain contact during the complicated maneuvers, but Ward's unpredictable approach confused German gunners. The Ju-88 had defensive armament, a 13mm machine gun in the dorsal turret. Ward attacked from directly below where the turret couldn't traverse. His cannons tore through the bomber's belly and detonated the bomb load. The explosion was massive. Ward flew through the debris cloud and emerged with dents in his fuselage, but no serious damage. The squadron's performance was unprecedented. 17 aircraft had scrambled at 22:52. By 0100, 21 German bombers were destroyed. 2 more kills would come in the next 40 minutes. The final count would reach 23 confirmed. Across southern England, other RAF night fighter squadrons were achieving similar results. Number 85 Squadron operating Bristol Beaufighters from Hunsdon destroyed 11 bombers. No 96 Squadron, flying de Havilland Mosquitoes from West Malling, shot down 14. No 141 Squadron claimed 9 kills. No 219 Squadron destroyed 7. The combined total exceeded 70 German bombers, destroyed in one night. The highest single-night loss rate the Luftwaffe had suffered since the Battle of Britain ended in October 1940. Operation Steinbock was failing catastrophically. 474 bombers had crossed the English Channel. Less than 400 reached London. The rest were destroyed over southern England or turned back after witnessing the slaughter. German bomber crews who survived reported seeing aircraft explode around them without warning. They described night fighters appearing from nowhere, firing deadly accurate bursts and disappearing back into darkness. They had no explanation for how British fighters could find them in total darkness with such precision. The bombers that did reach London dropped their ordnance hastily and fled. Most bombs fell on open countryside or the Thames estuary. The targeting was abysmal. Bombardiers were terrified. They knew night fighters were hunting them. They released their bombs early and turned for home. Civilian casualties were minimal. 73 people killed, 142 wounded. The damage was insignificant compared to the Blitz raids of 1940 and 1941. During the Blitz, single raids had killed over 1,000 civilians. Operation Steinbock's opening raid killed 73. German High Command was shocked by the losses. They had expected to lose 15 to 20 bombers. acceptable attrition for a major raid. Instead, they lost over 70 aircraft in one night. The casualty rate was unsustainable. 421 German airmen dead or missing. Another 58 captured after bailing out over England. The Luftwaffe couldn't replace those losses. Bomber crew training took 12 to 18 months. Experienced crews were irreplaceable. Every dead pilot, navigator, bombardier, or gunner represented thousands of hours of training wasted. Cunningham landed at Middle Wallop at 0040. The Beaufighter touched down smoothly. He taxied to the parking area and shut down both engines. The propellers stopped spinning. The night was silent. Cunningham climbed out of the cockpit. His legs were stiff. His hands were steady despite the whiskey he had consumed 3 hours earlier. The alcohol had metabolized. The adrenaline had burned through his system. He was exhausted but alert. Ronsley climbed out from the radar operator's compartment. He was smiling. 8 kills in one night. A new squadron record. Ground crew arrived to inspect the Beaufighter. No damage. All systems operational. The cannons had functioned perfectly. All 240 rounds fired without malfunction. The aircraft was refueled and rearmed immediately. Ready for another sortie if needed. It wasn't. The Luftwaffe had abandoned the raid. The surviving bombers were fleeing back to France. RAF Fighter Command stood down at 0200. The all-clear sounded across London at 0215. Civilians emerged from shelters. New Year's celebrations resumed. Most had no idea what had happened. They knew German bombers had attacked. They didn't know that RAF night fighters had destroyed over 70 of them. Intelligence officers arrived at 0300. They wanted details from every pilot. Times, locations, altitudes, aircraft types. Cunningham provided the information from memory. 8 Heinkel, He-177s and Junkers. Ju-88s destroyed between 2301 on December 31st and 0018 on January 1st. All 8 kills confirmed through multiple sources. Ground radar had tracked the interceptions. Observer Corps posts reported seeing aircraft crash. Wreckage was found exactly where Cunningham reported. The rest of 604 Squadron reported their kills. Flying Officer Benson, 3 confirmed. Flight Lieutenant Kellett, 4 confirmed. Pilot Officer Ward, 4 confirmed. 15 other Beaufighter crews claimed between 1 and 3 kills each. The final tally was 23 confirmed kills for number 604 Squadron, the highest single-night squadron total of the entire war. No other RAF squadron would match that record. The squadron had achieved this while drunk on New Year's Eve. The story became legendary within Fighter Command. Pilots joked that alcohol improved their accuracy. Squadron commanders didn't find it amusing. Orders went out prohibiting alcohol consumption within 12 hours of potential combat missions. The rule was impossible to enforce. Every night was a potential combat mission. Every pilot would have to remain sober indefinitely. The order was quietly ignored. Cunningham was promoted to wing commander in February 1944. He took command of No. 85 Squadron flying de Havilland Mosquitoes. The Mosquito was a revolutionary aircraft, built entirely from wood to conserve strategic metals. 2 Rolls-Royce Merlin engines producing 1,710 horsepower each, maximum speed 378 miles per hour. It was the fastest operational aircraft in the RAF. German fighters couldn't catch it. The Mosquito carried the same AI radar and 20mm cannon armament as the Beaufighter, 4 cannons in the belly, but the aircraft was lighter, faster, more maneuverable. Cunningham preferred it immediately. The Mosquito responded to control inputs faster than the Beaufighter. It climbed quicker. It turned tighter. The only disadvantage was reduced endurance. The Beaufighter could patrol for 4 hours. The Mosquito managed 3 hours maximum. Cunningham continued flying combat missions through June 1944. He adapted his tactics to exploit the Mosquito's speed advantage. Instead of closing slowly from behind, like in the Beaufighter, he could overtake German bombers from any angle. He developed the practice of approaching from below at high speed, climbing into firing position, engaging, and diving away before defensive gunners could react. The tactic was devastatingly effective. His final kill count reached 20 confirmed aircraft destroyed. He shot down 12 in the Beaufighter and 8 in the Mosquito. He became the highest-scoring British night fighter pilot of World War II. No other RAF night fighter pilot would match that total. Some came close. Wing Commander Branza Burbridge reached 19 kills. Wing Commander Bob Bram reached 17, but Cunningham remained number 1. The Germans continued Operation Steinbock through May 1944. They launched 29 major raids against London and other British cities. The raids achieved minimal results. The Luftwaffe lost over 329 bombers during the offensive. RAF night fighters destroyed most of them. The Baby Blitz failed to break British morale. It failed to disrupt war production. It failed to achieve any strategic objective. All it accomplished was the destruction of hundreds of German bombers and the death of thousands of trained Luftwaffe crewmen that Germany couldn't replace. John Cunningham survived the war. He left the Royal Air Force in 1946. He became a test pilot for de Havilland Aircraft Company. He test flew the Vampire, Britain's second jet fighter. He flew the Comet, the world's first jet airliner. He tested the DH-110C Vixen, a carrier-based fighter. In 1952, he set an altitude record in a Comet, reaching 63,668 feet. He remained with de Havilland until retirement in 1978. 43 years in aviation, military and civilian. The nickname Cat's Eyes followed him throughout his career. The British propaganda department had invented it in 1940 to explain Cunningham's night vision success. They claimed he ate carrots, which improved his eyesight. The story was fabricated to conceal the existence of AI radar. Carrots don't improve night vision. Radar does. But the nickname stuck. Cunningham never corrected anyone. Secrecy about radar technology was maintained until after the war ended. Flight Lieutenant Charles Rawnsley survived the war. He flew 142 operational sorties with Cunningham. He received the Distinguished Flying Cross for his service as a radar operator. After the war, he wrote a memoir titled Night Fighter, documenting his experiences with Cunningham. The book became a classic of aviation literature. It described the development of AI radar, the tactics of night fighting, the partnership between pilot and radar operator. Rawnsley emphasized that night fighting was a team effort. The pilot couldn't succeed without the radar operator. The radar operator was useless without the pilot. Success required perfect coordination. The Bristol Beaufighter served throughout World War II. 5,928 aircraft built, used in every theater: Europe, North Africa, Mediterranean, Far East. The aircraft destroyed hundreds of German and Japanese aircraft. It sank dozens of enemy ships. It attacked ground targets, destroyed vehicles, bombed installations. After the war, the Beaufighter was retired, replaced by jet-powered night fighters. Only a handful survive today, in museums. The aircraft that hunted 23 bombers on New Year's Eve, 1943, was scrapped. All records of its service exist only in documents. Squadron logs, combat reports, intelligence summaries. RAF Middle Wallop remained operational after the war. The airfield became a helicopter base. The Army Air Corps operates from it today. Apache attack helicopters replaced Beaufighters. The officers' mess still stands. The building where Cunningham and his pilots drank whiskey on New Year's Eve, 1943. Veterans occasionally visit. They remember the night the squadron destroyed 23 bombers. The night drunk pilots proved they could still fight. The night the Luftwaffe learned that darkness no longer protected their bombers. The German crews who died on New Year's Eve, 1943, are mostly forgotten. 138 men killed across No. 604 Squadron's 23 victories. Their names are recorded in Luftwaffe casualty lists. Most were between 19 and 25 years old. They trained for months. They flew missions over England, believing darkness made them invisible. They died without knowing what killed them. Radar-guided night fighters destroyed them before they even knew they were being hunted. Some burned alive when their aircraft caught fire. Others died from explosive decompression when cannon shells ruptured their fuselages. A few survived long enough to bail out. They were captured and spent the rest of the war in POW camps. Operation Steinbock killed 1,556 British civilians and wounded 3,850 between January and May 1944. The raids destroyed 10,000 buildings. The damage was significant but not strategic. British war production continued uninterrupted. Morale remained stable. The Luftwaffe sacrificed 329 irreplaceable bombers and over 1,800 trained crewmen for negligible results. The raids diverted resources from defending Germany against the American daylight bombing campaign and the impending Allied invasion of France. Hermann Göring had promised Hitler a knockout blow. He delivered a catastrophic failure. The Luftwaffe never recovered. By June 1944, when the Allies invaded Normandy, German bomber forces were so depleted they could barely contest Allied air superiority. The failure of Operation Steinbock contributed directly to Germany's defeat. The Luftwaffe had wasted irreplaceable resources attacking Britain when those resources were desperately needed elsewhere. John Cunningham died on July 21, 2002, in Surrey, England. He was 84 years old. He had outlived most of his squadron, outlived Rawnsley, outlived the German pilots he killed. He was buried with full military honors. Former colleagues attended. Aviation historians, de Havilland employees, veterans who remembered. The ceremony included a flyover by a restored de Havilland Mosquito. The aircraft circled once, dipped its wings, and flew away. The symbolism was perfect. The night fighter paying final respects to the night fighter pilot. His legacy wasn't just 20 confirmed kills, it was what he represented. The evolution of aerial combat, the integration of technology and skill, the partnership between pilot and radar operator, the proof that darkness no longer protected bombers. Cunningham and pilots like him changed warfare. They made night bombing suicidal. They forced the Luftwaffe to abandon nighttime operations or accept catastrophic losses. They protected British cities, they saved civilian lives, they won the night. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about pilots who hunted bombers in total darkness while drunk on New Year's Eve. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? You're not just a viewer. You're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Squadron Leader John Cunningham doesn't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.